the last few weeks have been probably the most difficult in terms of things that I've been faced with and decisions that I've had to make that I never thought that I would be faced with. I don't think anybody ever thinks they're going to be in this situation, and you would hope that nobody ever would be. A lot of people have been sending messages and asking what's going on, so I thought it would be easier just to say. I guess you could just not tell people about it, but I don't think that really helps at the end of the day, because so many people probably do go through this and feel like they can't talk about it, because the people possibly won't agree, or will judge you because you've been in this situation. But anyway, let's start from the start. So what happened was our pregnancy was progressing quite well, and usually for us that's a pretty good sign. So we'd had a few scans and that all looked really good, and then we were going in to have what's called a percept NIPT for increased risk of unbalanced translocations, which is basically just a blood test. And what they do as part of that process is they just do a scan just to check the progress of your pregnancy and that it's still viable, basically. So we went in for that scan and everything looked great, except not the technician, it was a doctor. He just kept looking at certain parts of the scan over and over, particularly checking the heart, and I just sort of asked if everything was okay, because I've been for many scans before and that didn't look normal. And he said that everything looked great, except there was a lot of fluid surrounding the baby. So the nuchal translucency was measuring at 6 millimeters, which is that's a lot of fluid. And there was a lot of fluid around the baby's abdomen as well. So he said, look, often that can indicate a chromosomal abnormality or a major organ defect, or both, or in some rare cases it means nothing and it goes away. So he said rather than have the blood test, that he recommended us having a CVS, which is basically just where they put a needle through your stomach into your placenta, take out a sample, and then they get that tested. So I agreed to that straight away, because I knew that would give the best indication of what was actually happening, whereas the blood test is more of a screening tool, not a diagnostic one. So we did that, and then we had to wait. It was about 11 days to get the results. And then when we got those, we found out that the baby was missing quite a large chunk of chromosome 1. And that it was actually the same amount of material, the same amount of chromosome that has been missing on all of our previous pregnancy losses. So everyone was a little baffled as to why the pregnancy was continuing at that point. So essentially the first thing they said to us is, do you want to continue with this pregnancy? Which I was sort of a bit taken aback by. Especially since that was even said to us before we even had the CVS. Basically said, you need to make a decision. And then I sort of was like, well, I don't even want to think about that. Just, I need more information about this. So at that point, they said that there were a few possibilities facing us, and none of them were good. So the first possibility, and sadly enough is the one that we were probably hoping for, was that the pregnancy would just end on its own. Which had always happened in the past, and it's kind of horrible to think, but that would have been the best outcome. So what they did at that point was a couple more scans. One was to check firstly that the pregnancy was still progressing, and that was just in my obstetrician's office. So that then told us that we need to really speak to a genetics counsellor to find out some more information about what would happen next. We could see there that it looked like the fluid was increasing around the baby as well. So that same day, we went and saw the genetics counsellor, and she said to us that what could possibly happen is that the pregnancy might just deteriorate on its own. Or if it didn't, the fluid, which appeared to be increasing, there was a possibility that that could cause complications for me, and that if that kept increasing, which it appeared to be at the time, that they'd probably come to a point where they'd say, look, you need to end this pregnancy now. So we obviously didn't want to be put in that position at some place down the track. So I was already 13 weeks at that point. The next option or possibility was that the pregnancy would end at some stage, that, you know, they could do weekly monitoring, but even if the baby had passed away and I didn't know about it for a couple of days, then that could be quite problematic in terms of infection and that kind of thing. The likelihood of the pregnancy going full term was unknown. Possible, but you know, you wouldn't know. And what we were told is that if the pregnancy did continue and made it full term, that the baby may not survive the birth, and that if it did, that babies who are born that have less genetic material missing in the same region, so I'm talking usually around 3 to 4 MB is what a lot of studies are done on, whereas this baby had 11 MB missing. So we're talking, you know, 3 to 4 times the amount of chromosome material missing. So those babies are usually characterised by, well, not babies, you know, as they grow up, they tend to be nonverbal, unable to walk, have very limited motor skills at all, usually have seizures frequently, it's often paired with major organ defects and inability to recognise people, including their own parents and family. So there are, as well as severe intellectual disability, and a whole host of other things that I won't go into. That's really just the start of what these people face, and essentially quality of life would be very, very limited. So we were hopeful that the pregnancy might just end on its own, but unfortunately it didn't. So we ended up making the very difficult decision to end the pregnancy before it got to any of those other points that, you know, we didn't want to face either. When it came down to it, we didn't really feel like there was any right decision to make. It felt like all the options were really the wrong option. You know, to end a pregnancy doesn't feel like the right thing to do, but also to bring someone into the world who's probably either not going to survive or suffer their entire life doesn't feel right either. So that's what we ended up doing. Okay, no, I know this is probably really hard to watch. I know it's really hard to talk about, and especially because it's only just happened. So this is a couple of days later. I'm still recovering physically. I'm not doing too badly, but I am actually okay, unless I'm talking or thinking about it. But like I say, I think if no one ever talks about this, then how do you ever help other people feel like they're not alone, or that they're the only person who's ever gone through this? So I don't want to end on such a horrible note. So in terms of the future and what does this mean for us moving forward, our next option is that we can do IVF with a particular set of screening that essentially has a look at all of the chromosomes and make sure that they're all exactly where they're supposed to be prior to implantation. So that's the process that we will be looking to do next. And I think that, you know, we just have to feel very fortunate that that's an option for us. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's something to look forward to after having been through something so horrible and traumatic. So hopefully the next time I give an update, it will be a much nicer one that's a lot more pleasant to watch.